Well, I told y'all I wasn't going to do any more segments on this playlist about the sewing all, but I lied. Um, I mentioned that there's two kinds of sewing alls. There's the one with the spool out here, and there's the one with the spool up in the handle that brings the thread out from the side of the handle. And I own both. I own one of each, and I prefer this one. When you're working with your thread and you've got it pulled out here, you can manipulate this spool with your thumb, and you can increase thread tension. You can roll it back if you've pulled out a little too much slack. You can use it as a brake. I find it much more convenient to work when the spool's out here. And I also thought I'd show you the only change I made on this one. I've had this for probably 2 or 3 decades. I don't really know. A long time. The little wrench comes in the handle, and it's a little wrench on one end and it's a screwdriver on the other end, and it's not a very good one of either, and it's always been sufficient. I've never used anything else. The little screwdrivers for taking out this screw to pull the spool out to refill it. I go through this thread pretty fast. I do a lot of this sewing. There's only one change that I've made in this thing in all the years I've owned it, and that is I drilled this little hole right here, and I drilled that with the littlest bit that comes with a Yankee drill, and just wasn't hard, you know. And the reason is because until I had that hole there, it was inconvenient to wind thread on, because you had to hold it against the spool axle or hub or whatever that is to get it to wind on. And with a little hole there, you know, you can just poke it through, hold it with your thumb, and then you can wind it. And I just hand wind them. I mean, you know, it's just a matter of trying to get it halfway even so that you don't get any great big lumps. I lay the spool down. Can I see it? Beside me in the chair, so that I can just pull it up, and it spools off, winds off. And sorry about all the bum fuzzling. And I just wind it on. Now, you do get some twist in the thread when you wind it on this way. Theoretically, if you could wind it on by having a little gizmo that turned it like this, it would be more ideal. But I've been sewing with this stuff for a long time, and I've never found that the amount of twist that it puts into the thread is enough to make it hard to work with. So you don't want to make it too full, though. If you get it clear out to the outer rim of the spools, then when you first start trying to sew with it, it wants to slip off those rims and get wound around the axle, and it's a pain in the neck. So it's a lot easier in the long run if you just stop a little sooner, plan on rewinding a little more often. I give it something about like this. That's about 1/8 of an inch, 3 millimeters or so, right there. Whoops. Machine is falling apart. You want to pull the needle out, and that's a little chuck. I take this thing clear off. This is just a little split 2-jaw chuck, and I've tightened it up so many times that it's gotten pretty hard to pull the needle out. Once again, I showed you, well, I don't know if I did or not, this needle's got a groove in one side as well as a hole, and you want your thread as it pays out here to lay up inside that groove. The hardest part about doing this, if you do it sitting in a chair like I do, is not losing all the small pieces down into the chair while you're working. Since it's waxed thread, it's pretty easy to make a stiff, pokey thing with it, so you don't have to worry much about threading. You just come in from the bottom. Poke it up through the hole, grab it. You want to be careful though that you don't get any of it, that you don't want your thread out over the sides. You know, like I said, it'll get wound around the axle and be hard. You have to take it back apart maybe. This thing is a pretty slack fit. There's no it's always seemed to me that it would be nice if there was a little natural friction braking to it. This fit in here a little tighter, but I've never bothered to do anything to fix that, so I guess it doesn't bother me too much. Like I said, you can use your fingers while you sew. Now you can see here, maybe the thread feeds off this side of the spool, the top. I'm going to turn it over now. It's feeding off the bottom of the spool. What you want to do is you want to pull it, get a hold of your spool with your fingers, pull the thread so it's down firmly against the side of the chuck there, and that way when you put the needle back in, you can lay the, come on, where's it? Lay the grooved end. I don't think I can get a video of that. You can lay the grooved end of the part of the needle right over the thread. This is easier to do than it is to video. This thread that I'm using now is just slightly larger than my last, and it makes it a little bit trickier. But you get it laid in that groove properly, and then the thread will feed out easily. It's easy to thread the needle because, as I said, it's a big hole and it's waxed thread, so it doesn't fuzz out. Once you get it like that, then you feed it through your chuck part there. Now, the older this has gotten, the more worn down and deformed that internal chuck has gotten. So I have to be pretty careful to get my needle to line up straight and then it takes a pretty firm grip on the chuck to get it tight enough that it won't spin when you're, because when I sew, I twist back and forth like this with my hand to get it to work through the workpiece. And if you don't have it pretty tight, the needle won't stay firm. So I make it pretty tight. And in my opinion, it's very difficult to tame one of these things if you don't have a cork. I mean, if you drink modest amounts of alcohol, buy a bottle of wine that's got a cork in it. Otherwise, go to someplace, some craft store or something, and get a cork. But you really need a cork because that thing is way sharp, and if it escapes from you, it will bite you. So that's that. Bye.